So this is going to be my review of Batman: The Last Arkham. Now, The Last Arkham was a four-part story in Batman: Shadow of the Bat, way back in the 80s, 90s era of Batman. And this was written by Alan Grant, and artwork was done by a legendary Batman artist, Norm Brayfogle, which I'm pretty sure a lot of you guys know best because he came back, I think, in Detectives during the Tony Daniel did the art and the writing for Detective in his run, pre-52. I know Brayfogle came back at some point in the comics, into DC Comics at some point, but I'm just getting my timetables all turned around here. Anyway, so let's talk about The Last Arkham. The Last Arkham is kind of spun as a sequel to Grant Morrison's A Serious House on a Serious Earth, which is a phenomenal comic, but not for little kids. I will stress that is a horror comic first and foremost. Oddly enough, that was the best-selling graphic novel, and the main reason was because Batman Forever came out. So I can only imagine that a lot of people bought that graphic novel going, "Hey, here, Jimmy, here's a Batman comic because I know you like Batman Forever." Ah! I don't like Timmy anyway, fuck you. Anyway, so after that rant, so this comic is actually an introduction to I guess you'd say known Batman villain, Mr. Zsasz. This is a intro comic into the character of Mr. Zsasz. But before that, this is the story of Jeremiah Arkham, which, like I said, this is a direct sequel, well, kind of sequel, to A Serious House on a Serious Earth. At least that's how they spin it, in a way. Which doesn't really make any goddamn sense, because when you read Serious House on a Serious Earth, it is clearly supposed to be its own thing. But whatever, it was popular at the time, so I'm not going to argue. Anyway, so Jeremiah Arkham tears down old Arkham Asylum and rebuilds it, and decides to make a new Arkham Asylum, and a new inmate is in tow, Batman. Batman has apparently killed Lieutenant Kitch. Remember that guy? And, yeah, at the same time, there is a series of murders going around that mimic Mr. Zsasz. Which, like I said, this is Mr. Zsasz's first appearance in the DC Comics universe. However, it's kind of weird because they treat Zsasz like he's always been around. That's the weird thing about this comic, is that they treat Zsasz like he's always been around, and it's really awkward when it's like, oh, it's Mr. Zsasz again. It's definitely got to be Mr. Zsasz. I was like, and people, I have to imagine, and keep in mind, I knew about Zsasz before reading this comic, and I can only imagine, you know, the people who read Shadow of the Bat and read this and was like, I've never heard of this guy. Why is he suddenly a big deal? There's no origin? What the hell? There's nothing here. But Zsasz is kind of, as we all know, Zsasz has kind of worked his way into multiple medias, has become something of a low-tier, very recognizable Batman villain. Zsasz in here has been so Batman is under this impression that Zsasz is somehow escaping the new Arkham Asylum, and he doesn't trust Jeremiah Arkham, because Jeremiah Arkham is apparently torturing the inmates, like he is apparently using holograms to torment holographic crows to torment Scarecrow. He's also like brutally beats Maxie Zeus. And at one time you're like, oh, this is really inhumane. But then you realize it's Arkham Asylum, home to the most horrible people on Earth in the DC universe. And you're kind of left in that moral quandary of, well, is Jeremiah doing the right thing, or is... I don't know. And I really wish they expand upon that. I really wish they did expand upon that, because this is really an obvious mystery story. In concept, it's like, oh, Batman's in Arkham Asylum, what's that going to do to him? And all these other cool elements, but for a four-part story, it's pretty straightforward. Batman goes to Arkham Asylum, and yeah, he doesn't kill Kitch. It's all a ruse to see if it's really Mr. Zsasz killing all these people. I'm just going to spoil that now. But I'm pretty sure you guys who are watching this, the majority of you already know this because you've probably already seen Mr. Zsasz's Wikipedia or whatever. And this is not a great this is not like a memorable comic, but I find it fun. And I know I'm like saying, oh, it's not, like I know I just said it's not a memorable comic, but keep in mind, it's a interesting comic. And Norm Brayfogle's art is really good. this comic really kind of establishes Zsasz, but it's weird too because we very much later on get away from this kind of Zsasz, where he is very much like this sophisticated serial killer. He still does the cuts to himself, but at the same time he dresses like Jack the Ripper, and yeah, that's forgotten very fast in later comics. But yeah, it's it's an interesting thing because, like I said, it has so many cool concept of like is what Jeremiah Arkham, what he's doing, is it a good thing, or is he just no better than what his uncle was, and is he doing the right thing, and what is this kind of doing psychologically to Batman being locked up here? We don't get that at all. What we do get is a lot of cool, fun little scenes here and there, and there is a moment in here that doesn't even pertain to the main story that I wish they kind of talked on more. You see, Batman kind of enters this story not directly, in that Bruce finds a girl in a graveyard, and the girl is beating her dolls and yelling at them, and when Batman's like, "Hey, don't worry, I'm not going to hurt you," he's like, "Aren't you worried about your mommy and daddy?" And he sees like the bruise on her face, and he's like, "Oh, okay, I get it." So Batman offers to take the girl home, and of course Zsasz has already killed her family, but Batman nor the girl know this. So he takes her there, and he's like, "Don't worry, I'll talk to your daddy. AK, I'm gonna beat the dog shit out of your dad and make an example out of his ass." So that I really wish, I really want to see, it's always interesting to me to see superheroes, especially someone like Batman, to encounter something like that, because he always had this perfect family in his head. Well, of course, like multiple comics, we've seen multiple different interpretations of that. Obviously, there's a major different interpretation of that in the Telltale games for Batman. But I've always kind of found that interesting, and I really wish they extended that more with Batman confronting domestic disturbances. Because while he's goddamn Batman, but he's still a man. I know they kind of dealt with that in a Superman comic by JMS, if I'm not mistaken. But, yeah. I don't know, I just felt like it would have been more appropriate for a Batman story, and I'm pretty sure they've kind of dealt something with this with Batman. But anyway, like I said, it's just kind of your average run-of-the-mill comic. We also get the first appearance of Amygdala. If you don't know who Amygdala was this big hulking guy who was psychologically altered in Arkham Asylum. And again, just like Zsasz, they just hey, here's this character that's totally important, but you've never met him. It's kind of like that. Like I said, it's kind of a for an interesting concept of Batman being locked in Arkham Asylum while hunting is it really the copycat? Is it really a copycat killer, or is it really Zsasz? Also the whole stuff with Jeremiah Arkham. None of it's really touched on, really. This is a pretty straightforward 4-part comic. It's nothing really life-changing or whatever. In concept, it's really cool, and it introduces Zsasz. But all in all, I got it for the trade for $3. So yeah. Anyway, it's something to at least check out in any case. But anyway, so you guys tell me in the comments below if you've read Batman: The Last Arkham. What'd you guys think of it? Did you guys like it? Hate it? Comment below. Let me know. Once again, I hope you all enjoyed this review, and I will see you guys later.